Hello again. I just got this video nicely edited, so I thought put it onto YouTube and was doing all the things you need to do to make it work better on YouTube. And then half of the audio of this video is now for the first time ever editing on iPhone. So I'm here doing a partial reshoot for some of behind the scenes and questions around the South Dorset Ridgeway Pilgrimage from Barrow to Barrow. A group of videos filmed between the Broadmain Barrow in Dorset and the Long Brady Barrow between the end of November 2020 through to almost the end of April 2021. The area is a profound sacred landscape. Now these two barrows, and there is a third, are unique to Dorset. What makes them unique is that you have the long earthen mounds that is like hundreds of feet, meters long, and there's a flat area on the sides which is called a berm, B-E-R-M. Then there's a ditch. The third barrow is along the central spine of now what is Maiden Castle. That has long been ploughed out to a subtle earthwork or cultivated out to a subtle earthwork. In between these two barrows, you have such a dense concentration of round barrows and variations upon round barrows, pond barrows, disc barrows, so on. I think it's up to a couple hundred. So I feel that in the Neolithic, this area was increasingly being viewed as somewhere sacred, as somewhere important. And then definitely as we head into the Bronze Age, it becomes even more of a sacred, interconnected landscape, more barrows being added, stone circles, adding to the few long barrows and burial monuments in the area. Then by the time the Iron Age comes around, sort of 500-ish, 400-ish BC, it's clear that Dorset, what we call now Dorset, South Dorset, was a very important area. The tribe there, the Rodriguez, Maiden Castle became their centre of effort. And when you're on Maiden Castle, you look to the south. You do have the South Dorset Ridgeway along its southern horizon, and it looks up towards that dense area of burial monuments. The South Dorset Ridgeway was something of an important burial area. People looked to their ancestors buried upon it, and the way that it's placed in the landscape is kind of presidential, presiding, a connection with that place for a very long time. Besides all the human effort of life, death, marriage, childbirth, tears, blood, bone, all going into making it. So it's a sacred, interconnected landscape. What makes it a personal pilgrimage is that since realising that these two barrows bookmarked this dense area of round barrows and other ancient sites, is that I wanted to walk between them on one day to have that kind of connection of feeling it, seeing it, being in it on the same day. And it's joined up in my brain, in my emotions, and my spirituality. So I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, and I got to do it just before Christmas 2020. Another reason for calling it a pilgrimage is that it was something very much of a mental and emotional means of dealing with trauma. Firstly, the trauma of the lockdown, of being confined, of limited social interaction in person. I pray we never have to go through that again. Absolutely awfully impacted mental health, but more significantly and personally for me is I ended up in Dorset for nearly 6 months because a member of my household assaulted me. They did not want to quarantine even though they had COVID. It got to the point of frustration where they assaulted me, tried to give me COVID by force by grabbing my face, breathing into me, my face. They were, yeah. I'm going to drop in some video here. I filmed at the time in the aftermath and a little bit afterwards, because at the time there were no vaccines. that I did not know how I would fare if I caught COVID. I am diabetic type 2, and some other things that could make at that time having COVID more of a problem for me. So I did not want to catch it. But this member of my household would not quarantine and attempted to give me COVID.
Hello. I've just been assaulted by and I cannot stay here.
I fled the property that night, spent the night in a hotel, and on November 4th, the day before another national lockdown, I drove 5 hours down the motorway to my parents, and so I stayed for 2 weeks quarantining at the bottom of their garden in their summer house. Due to the member of my household still not really wishing to play things safe and have no concept of how other people may be impacted by their behaviour, it was not safe for me to return home until vaccines were available. With the combination of lockdowns and vaccine availability, it ended up being the end of April before I was able to come back to what's meant to be my home, start looking for work again. So walking the Dorset Ridgeway was something of dealing with all this trauma, walking it out, just some solitude, and mile after mile of being in nature, old trees, the ancient sites, a connection with ancestors, absolutely magnificent. So it's quite bizarre that I had such a special time evolve out of such trauma.
It's not right that you can be assaulted in your own home. They are there and you have to be the one who's had the trauma and it's displaced from your home. I miss my kids so bad.
How else was this a pilgrimage? Also met a number of challenges and good things along the way. Some of the challenges being spooked once at Culliford Tree Barrow. Definite sense that I'd outstayed my welcome there and that I needed to exit the field. And another time when I was at Grey Mare and her colts, see the film on that for some audio and explaining why. Also met some folk whilst I was out walking, some of whom I'm still in touch with and have led on to other friendships. That's something that comes from a pilgrimage. It's also a pilgrimage because it stayed with me. I go through the films, the photos, and there is such a warmth, a fondness, an installation, an incorporation into my heart, into my being of these places, of the emotions of being there. And another benefit of the time being there was having time with my folks that I will never have again. We were able to help each other through the very long lockdowns and lots of weirdness, the mental struggles of that time and practicalities too. So lots of gratitude to my mum and dad. Thank you. Thanks, Dad. I'll always be grateful for that time and your company and everything that happened. On the techie side of things, there are things that I had to figure out, like memory, where I was going to put all the filming and so on. So there's about 40 ancient sites, seriously, I visited, and the footage was stored on these two phones, my old iPhone SE and the iPhone 6S. And most of it has been edited on this phone here, my iPhone 11. So it was keeping track of which footage was stored where on which device, bringing it all together. Absolutely nightmare, but I've got there. It's taken like 18 months towards 2 years to edit it all. Also needed to have stable footage, and for that I had my faithful flow motion gimbal, but now it has had enough, poor thing. I'll turn it on, but yeah, it still works a bit. And you can see it's being held together with cable ties. There are hairline fractures around the sides of the handle where it is split, so I need to hold it together. The pivot button has gone, the power button is gone, and now the motor is worn out. The footage would be juddery because it just does this. It shakes as it goes. There you go, you can see it's not fluidic at all. So my poor flow motion from Norway, end of its days. If you can recommend a good gimbal stabilization for filming with iPhone, because iPhone's so much easier to use for filming, out and about, and you get fantastic quality. Another issue I had was dealing with the wind noise on the microphone. A good workaround that I found was to use your iPhone headphones, which has a brilliant built-in microphone. Really, really good quality audio comes from that. Sometimes the wind was too strong and you still get that going, which nobody really wants to listen to. So then I would put the little dead kitten, the windshield around it, wrapped with an elastic band many times over, and that worked for some, but the wind, each time we seemed to go up on the Ridgeway, was just cutting through any wind protection I was giving it. So I had to work out replacing the audio, dropping out all that wind noise, and then working out a voiceover or recording a similar length piece of talking and cutting out the audio from that, or just substituting music and then going looking for music that I could use, which again takes up time. And what piece do I use where? I'm hoping I've got my choices right. And all should be credited with each video as their licenses for free, copyright free or licensed music permits. If you have a really good workaround for dealing with wind on your mic for filming with iPhone, let me know, because I know I'm going to be out there filming in the wilds again. This is not it, no. And if while filming you've seen some smoke wafting across, I've got some incense on the go over there. From like November through to the end of April, I covered, I think, nearly a couple thousand miles. In all seriousness, my daily average worked out over 10 kilometers per day over that period. Quite amazing, really. I was wanting to keep my folks safe as well as myself, so I didn't use any public transport. It had to be walks from Weymouth, north, south, east, west. Only once, maybe twice went east, and I started using some public transport towards the end of my stay. I think like within the last 2 or 3 weeks, once I'd had my first vaccine, and my parents had had theirs, and there was hopefully less risk of problems if any of us caught COVID. So you can watch this as a continuous playlist, or as I expect will happen is that many of the videos will be hit on individually and then you might land in somewhere or other. And if you feel so motivated to watch them all, thank you, or go exploring.